The following is the community notification from the Aurora Police Department for sexually violent predators and persons required to register as sex offenders. Sex offender legislative history. The national sex offender legislation consisted of the Jacob Wetterling Act, 1994, which requires all states to register sex offenders. Megan's Law of 1996 gave public access to the sex offender registry. The Pam Lynchner Act of 1996 mandated lifetime registration for some offenders. It also established the National Registry. The Adam Walsh Child Safety Act of 2006 and updated in 2009 sets uniform standards within all states. The Colorado sex offender legislation. Persons convicted on or after 7/1 of 91 or released from the Department of Corrections for sexual offenses against a child. Convicted in Colorado or another state on or after 7/1 of 94 or released from the Department of Corrections for a sexual offense. Colorado law is broader than that of the federal laws. Registration is required for both adults and juveniles. Some convictions allow for the petition to discontinue registration after a specific time. The most serious offenses require lifetime registration. Basic registration requirements. First, must register at a designated frequency, either annually or quarterly. 2, must report changes of address within 5 business days. Third, must report changes in name within 5 business days. Note, mere designation as a sex offender does not limit where a person may live, work, or visit. Community notification in Colorado. Notification in Colorado occurs in 2 ways. 1, passive and ongoing through the sex offender registration process. 2, active via community meetings for those sex offenders determined by the courts or parole board to be sexually violent predators, or SVPs. Facts and statistics about sex offending. Currently, there are approximately 18,100 registered sex offenders in Colorado. Approximately 65% of convicted sex offenders are placed on probation in Colorado. The rest go to the Department of Corrections, or DOC, and community corrections. Offenders may be caught for one type of an offense and be at high risk to commit another type. The crime of conviction is only one indicator of risk. Community responsibility. The community has vested interest in helping the offender be successfully managed in the community. Sex offenders have the same needs for housing and employment as other citizens. Harassment is counterproductive to goals of the community management and may cause the offender to go underground. Any citizen who uses this information to harass, threaten, or intimidate will be subject to criminal prosecution. Sex offender characteristics. Most sex offenders engage in crossover behavior. Many sex offenders have no criminal history. There is no typical sex offender, but all tend to be deceptive, manipulative, and secretive. 78 to 90% of sex offenses are committed by someone known to the victim. Sexual deviancy begins in mid to late adolescence. Sexual offenses are not impulsive. They are usually carefully planned. Most sex offenders are male. Sexually violent predators criteria, SVP. 1. The person must be convicted as an adult on or after July 1st of 1999. 2. The crime occurred on or after July 1st of 1997 and consisted of sexual assault, unlawful sexual contact, sexual assault on a child. All include attempts, solicitations, and conspiracies. 3. The victim must be a stranger or a person who the offender cultivated a relationship primarily for the purpose of sexual victimization. 4. The offender is determined to be a risk to the community as a result of psychological testing, prior convictions, etc. SVP status is determined by courts or parole board or designated as a sexually violent predator from another state. Sexually violent predator, SVP. The legislature determined that sexually violent predators, SVPs, by definition, pose a higher risk to the community at large and therefore mandated that upon their release from the Department of Corrections, or DOC, the community must be notified. An SVP may be more likely to reoffend in the first year upon release from the Department of Corrections. Impact on victims of sex offenses. Victims exhibit many different responses: crying, angry, quiet, withdrawn. There are no normal responses. Sex assault by someone known to the victim creates more difficult recovery. Victims often develop post-traumatic stress disorder. Long-term effects include depression, anxiety, eating disorders, flashbacks, divorce, loss of sexual interest, loss of concentration, sleeping disorders, and suicide. Male victims tend to develop antisocial behaviors, while female victims tend to develop depression. Responses are minimized when victims are believed and supported. Containment approach. The criminal justice supervision for the sexual offender. While under the supervision of the criminal justice system, they are required to submit to polygraph examinations, also required to attend sex offender treatment, specific treatment. Additionally, community members can help in the containment of sex offenders by reporting to law enforcement any concerns. Sex offender management. Most sex offenders in Colorado are supervised by the criminal justice system in the community. Probation officers and parole officers set conditions, monitor behavior, and impose sanctions. Sex offenders must waive confidentiality for treatment and case management purposes. Secrecy undermines the rehabilitation and threatens the public safety. Sex offenders must be completely accountable for their behavior and must agree to intensive and intrusive measures. What if the offender moves? If the offender moves from his or her current address, we will notify the community. Community protection and safety issues. SVPs do not represent all dangerous sex offenders. The community notification process and sex offender registration are not a complete deterrent to sexual assault. Please remember, vigilantism, harassment, threats, or intimidation of the offender is counterproductive to the best interest and safety of the community. We want them to be registered and visible in the community and not underground. Such activity is criminal and will be investigated, and the actor will be subject to prosecution.
The Aurora Police Department has a new sexually violent predator. His name is Robert Edward Quintano. Date of birth is 7/20/1960. He's 59 years old, white male, 5'10", 205 pounds. He has brown hair and brown eyes. His address is 1744 Boston Street, number 104. Quintano must register with the Aurora Police Department Sex Crimes Unit quarterly and throughout his lifetime. His residence must be verified quarterly by the Sex Crimes Unit. Brief criminal history. April 17th, 2019, he registered with the Aurora Police Department Registration Unit, currently living at 1744 Boston Street, number 104. October 2000, convicted in Arapahoe County for sexual assault on a child, 3 counts, case number 1998 CR 2599. January 2000, convicted in Adams County for sexual assault on a child, F4, case 1998 CR 2723. October 2018, convicted in Adams County for sex assault 3, no consent, case number 1998 CR 2763. In March 2001, convicted in Adams County for intimidating a victim witness, F4, case number 1999 CR 2646. Quintano is currently on parole in Colorado. He was determined to be a sexual violent predator because he was approximately 38 years old at the time of the incident. Quintano was convicted in October 2000 for sexual assault on a child, 3 counts. The victim was known to Quintano. Quintano was determined by the Colorado State Board of Parole to be a sexually violent predator, November 20th, 2013. Quintano's current legal status, condition of parole: schools near 1744 Boston Street, number 104, Crawford Elementary, Montview Elementary, Paris Elementary School, Boston P8, Aurora West College Preparatory, North Middle School, Aurora Central High School, Rocky Mountain Prep. Parks and trails near 1744 Boston Street, number 104, City Park, Generals Park, Montview Park, Moorhead Park, Spencer Garrett Park, Sand Creek Greenway Trail, Westerly Creek Trail, Tollgate Creek Trail. Recreation centers near 1744 Boston Street, number 104, Moorhead Recreation Center, Aurora Center for Active Adults. Bus routes near 1744 Boston Street, number 104, Route 6, Route 10, Route 15, Route 15L, Route 105, Route 121. And as always, if there are any changes, we will notify the community.